My name is Allan Cameron. I'm the founding executive director and producer for Veterans Voices of Canada, and it's a nonprofit organization that began back in 2006, I guess, was when I did my first interview. The organization itself became a nonprofit in 2008, became a registered charity, and the whole reason this began was, well, I've always been a history buff ever since I was probably 8 years old. I can still remember, and my mom tells me all the time, that I would be traveling back and forth to the local library, coming back and forth 2-3 times a day sometimes with armloads of books, and them all being history books, mostly World War II. I guess the whole interest for what I'm doing, it came from my family members. My mom and dad, they actually both had relatives who were World War II veterans, and I guess that's where the interest came from, hearing these stories as I was growing up. My mom had an uncle who would be my great uncle. His name was Ernest Glenmore Hill. He was a North Nova Scotia Highlander, a D-Day veteran, and he actually was killed in France on July 25th, 1944. So as I was growing up, I heard a lot of the stories about him, but didn't know a lot of details. And that encouraged me to find out a little bit more about him, do some research, and it was amazing the story that I found out about him actually. I recently interviewed a fellow who knew him and who actually was there 10 minutes before he was killed. And he told me that story, July 25th, 44, Tilly-le-Campagne, France. My great uncle was part of a recce group, reconnaissance group of 3 Bren gun carriers, of which he was the machine gunner on that carrier. They had gone into the town early morning. First thing they saw was a German Mark IV tank with its gun slowly rotating towards them. And they saw this, they went to turn around to go back where they just came from. Obviously they were in harm's way. On their way in to the town, another German Mark IV tank came in behind them, so they were basically trapped. They jumped out of the Bren gun carrier and ran into a building. And from what I heard, my uncle and a corporal of that carrier that they were in ran into the building, saw that the building was filled with North Nova Scotia Highlanders. Not a good place to be. They wanted to get away from where the people were, so they tried to get out of the back of the building through a rear door. And apparently a few seconds later, a machine gun burst. My uncle and the corporal went down. The last they heard of him, he was hollering for some help from the other Canadians, and that was the last they heard of him. So that's obviously where he passed away. An uncle of mine, his name was Allan Cameron, another D-Day veteran, North Nova Scotia Highlander. He was one of those veterans, one of those soldiers who wasn't interested in telling his story. Over the years, I heard that you could ask him a question and he would start to talk about it, but not for very long. The memories would flood back and he couldn't talk about it. It was only the last few years before he passed away that he started to actually talk about his experiences. So we had made a date, I guess, to do an interview and to talk about his experiences, and he was ready to go. This was back in 2001. He was all set to go. Just needed a month or two to take care of some business, and we were going to do the interview. And I had a gut feeling. Something told me this isn't going to happen. And I received a phone call probably 2 months later. He passed away. And with him passed all of the stories, all of his experiences. We don't have those recorded now. And that's the whole idea for me doing what I'm doing here right now. There was also another a veteran I interviewed. His name was Victor Shea, another World War II, a D-Day veteran. And again, this is the whole reason behind this documentation, is the experiences that he'd gone through were so traumatic. And we have to understand that as youth of today, we have to understand what these people did for us back then. He came back after the war went back to Nova Scotia and basically disappeared. He moved into the forest. He told me he had a log cabin that he liked to go to. He basically stayed there for 35 years. And when he did come out, he still wasn't willing to tell his story. He came forward and told me that story because he knew he was getting older, that he probably didn't have a lot of time left, and that that story should be told. So fortunately he understood that the stories have to get out. And after that interview, apparently from what I was told by a friend of his, that was the first really good night's sleep he had in maybe 50, 60 years.
And
I've worked in television, video broadcasting from '94 until 2005, which is basically when I began this whole organization. I worked in television across Canada. I thought I was going to have a career in television broadcasting, but I found out soon after that basically that was preparing me for doing what I'm doing now, which is the Veterans Voices of Canada. And it's a non-profit organization. There's a lot of obstacles with that. Fundraising is a big part of it, and just keeping the organization running on a day-to-day basis. So with that comes volunteers. Hopefully more volunteers will come forward. It takes a lot of people to make this happen, basically.